Hello everybody, my name is Pookzta here, and today we're back with a brand new video. We are back with another third channel video, and this is a third channel video that has been in the works for some time now, and I finally got around to recording it and stuff like that, and it was perfect timing as well, because BHVR did their recent April community stream and this upcoming PTB and patch where they're finally nerfing Blight, they're nerfing Nurse, they're giving us a diminishing return thing to the game, which is meant to heavily balance stuff like healing speeds, gen repair speeds and stuff like that. It looks great, but now that we're nerfing Blight and Nurse down, I think now it is the case of tackling the strong stuff on Survivor, and this video is all being recorded before we see those PTB changes, so some of the changes I do mention in this video could be in that PTB, so they will be put up on screen now, like not now but like at the end, or if they're brought up in this video they will be shown that they have done this in this PTB for the mid chapter. But this mid chapter is looking really well, and it looks like we're pushing the game into a much more balanced direction, and this is the one chance we have for Survivor to be finally toned down for the rest of the killer cast, and that's what this video is meant to be. We'll go over Survivor perk changes that need it, Survivor and killer base kit changes, generator changes and item changes, all in today's video. This intro is the last thing I'm recording for this video. I recorded all the sections first. This video is meant to be talking about all the change. I will be adding behavior in this video as well, so then they can look at this. Hello behavior if you're watching, because I want you to take ideas from this video to use to just push Survivor less from the OP side, which was done to tackle stuff like Blight. But because Blight is getting nerfed, I feel like it's time to tone down some stuff on Survivor, and that's all what these changes are meant to do. Tone some of the most busted stuff on Survivor down, now that you're nerfing Blight and Nurse, so they will no longer bottleneck the game. But yeah, that's basically what this video is meant to be. Some changes that I want to see come to Dead by Daylight, a wish list of balance changes and everything like that coming to Dead by Daylight, that I would love to see added to the game. This video was actually going to be a lot longer than it is, because I basically got very carried away with it, where I started doing killer changes. Like I changed almost all the killer roster to different buffs, different add-on changes they could need. I changed almost every single killer perk that could need buffing, nerfing. Did the same with almost every single Survivor perk that needed buffing, nerfing. I did so much stuff, but at the end of the day I was like, this is way too much for me to do, and by the time I did this video it'd probably be heavily outdated. So that's why I decided to tone it down and only do the changes. And to be honest, some of those changes are coming with this upcoming PTB, especially like the Blight changes, so that's why this video would be heavily outdated if I started doing it now. And in this video it just tackles some really core issues that the game has, with some balancing, with some Survivor perk synergies that should go and stuff like that, generator changes, item changes to medkits and toolboxes. Other than that, without further ado, I think we're going to start this video. So without further ado, let's move on to the first section that we're going to discuss regarding the game's balancing, and that is Survivor perk changes. So let's go. Right guys, so moving on to some Survivor perk changes, and these are just very simple, very just basic perk number adjustments I think would push some perks into the right place. As you know, Blight's getting nerfed, Nurse is getting nerfed, and we're finally having some symmetry between killers added back to the game, meaning that killers will hopefully be closer in strength together. And now this is a perfect opportunity for some of these busted perks that have been in the game for ages to get nerfed down more, to be on level, to they're just not busted pretty much, because some of these perks have stayed the same way for ages and have not gotten changes when I think they kind of need them. These perks I think would still be used, don't get me wrong, but just to make it a little bit more balanced, a little bit more fair, and considering Blight and Nurse are getting nerfed, I think it's only fair that some of these perks get changes. So to start us off, let's talk about some perks. I didn't really get much changes to them, but these changes will definitely help a lot, and that's starting with Unbreakable, which now will have the new effect, which it will disable when all generators are completed. and there will be a new effect added to that perk, and that is when you still have Unbreakable, active and you haven't used it yet, you'll have a new animation while in the dying state. This is meant to give killers a little bit more counterplay, because if they down you and they're either trying to slug for the 4K, or there's a survivor hovering around for a flashlight save, pallet save, whatever, the killer can see that that survivor has Unbreakable, meaning they're going to try and recover themselves, meaning they can hopefully try and work around that a little bit better. It'll also just add a bit more quality of life to the game as well. Another perk very similar to Unbreakable is Dead Hard, which is having a similar effect applied to it, where when all generators are completed, the perk will be disabled in the end game. This is all meant to make it so the end game is more of a survival of the fittest, and you'll see some more of those changes later on when we get to some base kit changes happening with the survivor and killer role. But Dead Hard is just having, and I'll talk about more of that later when we get to that. But Dead Hard is just making it so it's disabled when all generators are completed. And one more thing Dead Hard is getting added to it is that when a survivor is within 6 meters of a pallet or window, Dead Hard can't be used. And this is mainly to counter the most brain dead playstyle that people use Dead Hard for, because Dead Hard can work in Dead by Daylight. Other ASIM games like by Night, Forsaken, Roblox ASIM games, they have characters, they have roles which can parry, and Dead Hard is meant to be a parry of sorts in Dead by Daylight. And I know those ASIM games are different, but parry can work in this game. But people use Dead Hard in such a brainless, mindless way, and it goes against of what a parry is kind of meant to be, in a sense. So Dead Hard is having it so it can't be used within 6 meters of a pallet or window, because this removes the playstyle where survivors can just Dead Hard near pallets and windows when you have to swing, otherwise they vault over it or they drop the pallet on top of your head. And I've had this done to me plenty of times before, where it's either I let them drop the pallet and gain more distance, or I just take the Dead Hard and they still gain more distance. So I think just to remove that brainless playstyle of using it when the killer has to hit you, otherwise you make more distance with a vault or you make more distance dropping a pallet, I feel like that would just bring Dead Hard into more of a balanced state, so in a way, by just making it, and it just removes that brainlessness when people use Dead Hard, when you have to swing and hit them near a pallet window. But that's just some of the changes I want to bring to those two perks. Another change to another perk will be Windows of Opportunity, which we are re-adding the 10-second cooldown, and we are decreasing the range to 24 meters. Windows of Opportunity is similar to Dead Hard. It is a very mindless perk that survivors use. And now I will say it's good for beginners, but you can tell when a player has it and a player doesn't have it. There have been videos made about Windows of Opportunity, about why when it's used on good players, it can just give you this advantage that you never really had before. And while it should still stay as a perk that helps new players look at maps, see where pallets spawn and stuff like that, I still think it should regain the cooldown back to after dropping a pallet, and decreasing the range to 24 meters. But yeah, that's kind of just what I wanted to add to Windows of Opportunity, just because it is also a kind of brainless perk to use, similar to Dead Hard in a way. So I just wanted to give it its cooldown back, and I just wanted to decrease the range to 24 meters. And now moving on to some other perks, and I'd say these are the big three perks of Exhaustion, being Sprint Burst, Balanced Landing, and Life, where Life and Balanced Landing are both getting their haste decreased to 25%, and Balanced Landing is getting a decreased reduced stagger to 50%. I know Balanced Landing is more situational than Life, but Life is just such an easy perk to use, and it won't. And unlike Sprint Burst, you can run around with it, and all it takes is one button press just to use it. while the killer equivalent to life, being unbound, you have to first damage a survivor, you then have a 30-second window to vault a pallet, even that, or, you know, vault a window, and then you just have to, and then once you vaulted that window, you just get a measly 7% haste, which means most of the time you have to pair it with something else in order to get the full value of it. And I just think just decreasing the haste 25%, because 50% haste means the survivor moves at 6 meters a second. 25% haste means they move at 5 meters a second. 6 meters a second, 6 times 3, which is how long life lasts. You can move 18 meters across the map. That's 18 meters across the map. That's almost 25% of the map you have covered by just using life. And life is just heavily used with the whole like hold W play style that survivors have. So I think just decreasing the haste to 25% would be a good change. Same with balanced landing, and that's why I'd reduce the stagger on balanced landing as well to 50%. Just because, you know, balanced landing, even though it is harder to pull off, it still also kind of falls into the just hold W play style, and it can be used very aggressively when at tool loops and stuff. And I also did it just so then weaker killers that don't have really the map mobility or the catching up place, or like being able to catch up fast, actually have somewhat of a chance now to deal with stuff like this. And that's also sprint burst as well. Sprint burst, I didn't decrease the haste to 25%. All I did was increase the exhaustion to 60 seconds, and I decreased the duration to 2 seconds. Sprint burst, I didn't bother making it 25%, because then it'd be very similar to dramaturgy, which also involves running, but you do have an activation which you can use that, and you must be healthy. But I thought it'd be a little bit too similar to dramaturgy if you made it 25%, so I didn't decrease the haste, but I did decrease the duration to 2 seconds and increase the exhaustion to 60 seconds for sprint burst as well. And that's like the main big 3 exhaustion perks, I guess, besides Dead Hard, but I already covered that. That's like the main big 3 exhaustion perks that people use that I think could do a little bit more balancing, because some of these perks haven't been touched in ages. But yeah, anyway, that's just like the main big 3 exhaustion perks taken care of. And then the next perks that I'm going to talk about, just a few outliers here and there. Starting off with Decisive Strike, decreasing the duration of 40 seconds. I loved it when they decreased off the records duration from 80 to 40 seconds. I think that was a really good change. And I think Decisive Strike could have the same effect where it goes from 60 to 40 seconds. Because realistically, if the killer is struggling, because like realistically, a 60-second Decisive Strike, actually, if you think about it correctly, it kind of can be a buff in a way, because that means survivors will be more prompted to get on gens sooner instead of trying to play aggressive with their Decisive Strike, because they have a whole 60 seconds of it. If anything, that promotes just getting on generators sooner, so they don't have to worry about the conspicuous action taking away the anti-tunnel. So that's just a win. It's kind of like a semi-buff, semi-nerf in a way. Moving on to Resilience. Resilience, I literally just made it so that it cannot be used when you have a medkit or toolbox in your hand. This is meant to remove the whole thing where you repair with Resilience and you 99 a heal with it as well, because it's very annoying to face when survivors just 99 their heals with Resilience. And I also removed the increased vault speed from Resilience as well. Then after that we have Vigil. Vigil has the most overtuned numbers of any perk in the entire game, and I think out of all these survivor perk changes, Vigil, it would be the one that I would want changed the most, besides from the Dead Hard changes I made and the Decisive Strike changes I made. Besides from those, those would be the top 3 changes I would want the most out of all these perk changes. But Vigil, all I did was I decreased the percentage to 33%, reduced the range to 10 meters of how far Vigil can affect survivors, and now I give it a new effect where it only works on other survivors and not yourself. And this kind of also comes back to Resilience as well, because before behavior removed like the header text on perks, where I used to say like in dire situations you're more prone to acting quickly or whatever. That's what it said on resilience. And then like vigil, it was you know how to keep the team organized to help them through times of need or whatever. I can't remember what it is, but they will be on screen. I just wanted to make it a bit more like that. So vigil now only works on other survivors and not yourself, and that's kind of why resilience, because it kind of also fits lore wise, that resilience, when you have no other options, you must be resilient. And that's why like it kind of makes sense that resilience wouldn't work while holding a medkit toolbox, kind of like lore sense in a way. And vigil also would make lore sense that it doesn't work on you anymore and it only works on other survivors. I still think people would use these perks either way, and you have to keep in mind this is all because Nurse and Blight are getting nerfed. Like, these survivor perk changes are like perk changes that we need in the game, especially now that some of the top tiers are being nerfed down to better fit the A+ tiers and all that. That is really it for those two perks. Moving out to some of the gen rushy perks. The main gen rush perks are the skill check perks. So that's why we're going to be tackling them as well. So hyper focus, fast track, and stakeout. Stakeout's getting its bonus progression removed, but in compensation, it reduces the amount of time you have to stay in the terror radius to 10 seconds instead of 15 seconds. Hyper focus is just getting its bonus progression removed altogether, and fast track is just being reverted back to what it originally was before it got reworked in the all kill comeback chapter. These are just meant to start like the whole gen rushing aspects of the game and everything like that, because like these perks are like, I face them so commonly and it's so absurd. Some of these perks are like stakeout, you could argue it could stay the same, but hyper focus just needs to have the bonus progression removed. It needs the bonus progression removed, and then fast track just needs a full revert to what it was. It doesn't need a nerf, it just needs to be reverted back to what it was before. But yeah, that's kind of like the main gen rushy perks tackled and out the way and stuff. And then just moving on to a few perks I actually did miss here. Reassurance, shoulder the burden. Reassurance is getting the duration decreased to 15 seconds from 30 seconds, where the survivor has no hook timer going, is I think a bit absurd. So just reducing reassurance from 30 to 15 seconds would be a nerf to it, but a nerf that I would probably need, because you may not see a lot of reassurances, but when it is used, oh boy, it is used very, very aggressively. When it is used, it can be very, very annoying to face. And shoulder the burden, what I did is that when you use shoulder the burden, the expose is increased from a measly 40 seconds to 60 seconds. Considering what the perk is and all of the changes I'm giving today is considering the Blight nerfs and the Nurse nerfs that are coming to the game. Shoulder the burden, just increase the expose from 40 to 60 seconds, and then I added a new effect where the killer can see the person that used shoulder the burden's aura for 15 seconds. This is all done because shoulder the burden, like that's all done because shoulder the burden is so annoying, because all it is that a survivor uses shoulder the burden, then the exposed survivor hides for the entire duration of the expose, and then using vigil, that expose is obviously shortened. So using vigil, it's just very annoying. It's really annoying to like face, where people just use shoulder the burden, then they just like off somewhere to Narnia and use vigil to lower the how long they're exposed for. And so it's just very annoying to face, and then you have nothing else but to chase the person that just got unhooked, and they have all like these other anti-tunnel and perks on them and stuff, so there's like no point at the end of the day. So that's why I've added it that the killer can see the person who used shoulder the burden's aura for 15 seconds, just so they can get a general idea where they are, where they're heading and stuff like that, so that it's not just like they can use it. And it also adds a bit more risk reward factor to some of these perks. Like that's some of the changes I want to add to these, is that they're more risk reward. Like the resilience changes, you can bring a medkit tool. No, it's like the shoulder of the burden changes. You can just, it's more risk reward. You can do it, but you'll be exposed for 60 seconds, and the killer can see your aura for 15 seconds. There is an argument to make that 10 seconds. That is something you can do. And because of that as well, you might just want to keep the exposed to 40 seconds, but just doing that, it would be a huge nerf to the shoulder of the burden, which I do think it needs, because currently the way it is used and the way survivors use it is just, it's really annoying. It is really annoying to face against. Now, there are 2 perks in it, so that's basically all the perks out the way and done that I wanted to talk about. Just some perks I do think need nerfing down, and all of that, considering that Blight is getting nerfed down as well. Those I'm definitely missing a few perks on here, like for example breakdown, decreasing how long the hook's broken from 180 to 90 seconds. This removes the annoying aspect with bully squads, even though you don't really see them now much anymore, considering that map offerings aren't available to use now. But yeah, that's just what some of these perk changes are, to remove the annoyance, especially now that Blight's getting nerfed and those top tiers are being reverted. Like pallet density is a huge thing as well that might get touched on, because Blight's getting removed now. But not removed, but like is getting nerfed. But there are 2 perks on here that I didn't talk about, that being plot twist and deliverance. And that is because I was going to talk about them later, but I'm just going to give them a quick summary now. Plot twist and deliverance, when these perks are used, they count as conspicuous actions upon use. Deliverance, when you unhook yourself using deliverance, that will count as a conspicuous action, disabling things like your DS, base kit borrow time and stuff like that. And plot twist also disable things like DS. This is meant to remove the annoying playstyle, especially with plot twist, where survivors will just use it and there's nothing the killer can do. It's either you pick up, you take the DS stun, and then if you don't have a way to catch up or some type of range attack on you or something like that to like get survivors with it, then there's like no, and then so they can just get away for free using that, or you keep them on the floor and they just get a free health state. It's meant to remove that annoying aspect that survivors use DS such aggressively, and also adds more risk reward, because even when survivors aren't using it aggressively, I would sometimes just find the plot twist survivor on the floor, in like the most obvious spot ever. I then pick them up, and because they have DS, they just stun me and they can just get away with it. So it's meant to remove that aspect from the perk as well. And then deliverance as well, it's meant to remove the whole aspect where you move like 10 meters away from the hut, the survivor just uses deliverance and there's no point in chasing them, because they just have base kit BT, they have DS on top of that, and all the other anti-tunnel slug perks on top of that as well. And that's what these 2 perks are meant to like tackle. Deliverance and plot twist are meant to tackle those annoying instances where survivors can just use it very aggressively and stuff like that. And that's basically what all these survivor perk changes are meant to be. They're meant to just remove the annoying aspects, and that survivors can just abuse these perks together and stuff like that. And that I'm definitely missing perks on this list that people would want nerfing and stuff. I know definitely a few I have missed, like I mentioned breakdown, removing that for bully squads, even though bully squads aren't common anymore, because like I said, map offerings got a nerf and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, besides from that, that is it for survivor perk changes. That's all the perk changes I want adding to the game. That's all perk changes I want them to like adjust values for and stuff like that. And now we'll move on to the next part of this wish list for changes I want to DBD, and that will be base kit changes for both killer and survivor. So without further ado, let's move on to those. Right guys, so now moving on to the base kit changes for both killer and survivor, and there's only 1 killer base kit change I've made, and that is decreasing the hook timer from 70 to 60 seconds. This one is very self-explanatory. People have talked about this for ages since it came in, and it was actually part of the Castlevania chapter release, which was the first chapter release I ever experienced when I joined the game, when FNAF got announced to it. And this is very self-explanatory of why people want it back to 60 seconds. Now they made it 70 seconds as compensation for generators. They made it as compensation for generators being moved up from 80 to 90 seconds. But I don't think, like, compared to generator speeds and everything like that, compared to hook timer, the only thing to decrease hook timer speeds with is a perk that no one uses because it has some weird activations to it, and it's Scourge Hook Monstrous Shrine, by the way, because it has weird activations to it, and like there's no point in really using that perk over gen regression, because considering everything to do with gen speeds and everything like that, just like decreasing hook timers back to 60 seconds would just be a buff that everyone wanted, that everyone wants back to the game, because 70-second hook timers, it goes from a 30-second first stage to a 35-second first stage. That's an extra 5 seconds survivors can stay on gens and stuff like that. And just like I said, comparing hook timers compared to gen timers, it's just a change everyone would want. But moving on from that, now we have survivor base kit changes, and this is going to be one of the first ones to get out of the way, and that is we're decreasing the duration of the endurance and haste back down to 10 seconds from 15 seconds. I don't know why. Now they've moved up to 15 seconds as a middle ground because of the whole anti-tunnel changes and stuff they're doing between 9.2.0 and 9.3.0 patches, where they wanted to tackle the anti-tunnel and anti-slugging changes and stuff like that, but it didn't need it. So I think just decreasing the duration of the endurance and haste to 10 seconds again would be a good change. Because the 15-second endurance and haste just wasn't needed. It just wasn't needed. Just fully reverted back down. And another thing to do with that is that now survivors will now glow when they're under the endurance status effect. That's just a nice quality of life change to add to survivors. It will just tell you which survivors are under the endurance status effect. Is basically just there for quality of life. And another change as well, and this goes back to what I did with Unbreakable and Dead Hard, and that is with the endgame. So when all generators get completed, the endurance and haste from unhooks gets decreased to 5 seconds. The reason for this is because it's meant to stop those situations where it's literally just unwinnable for the killer unless you're like Bubba or something like that, where it's literally just unwinnable. Because if you have like 2 survivors sacrificed and you have another survivor on hook, and then you have another survivor that's gone to open the gates, and you've pretty much secured that kill. But if you have 1 survivor sacrificed and then you have 2 survivors alive and 1 survivor on hook in the end game, then you've just lost. There's no, unless the survivors royally screw up there, you've lost. So there's like no point in like protecting that unhook unless it's like in basement or something and you're like Trapper or Bubba, like I said, or you're a killer with a really short cooldown on like M2 attacks or whatever. But other than that, it's just a lose-lose situation, and this is what I'm meant to mean. And there's another change as well, where the endgame collapse timer will no longer slow down. The endgame collapse timer starts when the exit gates are open, and it lasts for like 120 seconds. And when a survivor is downed or on hook, it gets slowed down by 50%, meaning it goes, I believe so anyway. If not, it increases to 180% if it is decreased by 50%, or it goes up to 240 seconds. Because it gets increased by 100%, which means if you have like 30 seconds left on the timer and then you hook a survivor, that's either 45 seconds left for the timer to go, or that's 60 seconds left for the timer to go. And I just think the endgame collapse timer should not slow down at all. This is all meant to make the endgame feel like the survival of the fittest, make it actually feel like a struggle, and not, oh, here comes the 3 musketeers to unhook they're damsel in distress, and there's nothing I can do because it's just body block, I injure, body block, injure, body block, injure, running in line like the goddamn Beatles across the road in that one album cover. I don't listen to the Beatles, but like it's just meant to stop that, where there's like no point. There's just no point in protecting that unhook at that point. You might as well just go. You might as well just go look at the map scenery or something at that point, because there's no point to it. This isn't. Well, all these changes is meant to feel like the end game is more of a survival of the fittest type Hunger Games scenario than it is just, oh, I haven't killed at least 2 survivors, got a survivor on hook in end game, I guess I just lose unless the survivors royally screw up, or I'm running like Bubba or Trapper in basement or something like that. It's just meant to be push the end game into more survival of the fittest type thing. But yeah, that's basically all the stuff to do with like the unhooks and stuff like that. That's just some like quality of life, some nerfs to some things to do with Survivor. And now we're moving on to 2 very interesting changes, and I'll say this for all the different sections of changes that I want, but out of all the base kit changes, these 2 changes are changes that I want the most. So as you know, I talked about plot twist, I talked about deliverance, both of them having conspicuous actions applied to them, so when they're used, it's not just a lose-lose for the killer, that the survivor just gets to pick themselves up for free, or they pick up the survivor and they stun them for 4 seconds and they can make whatever then, probably like Shaq or something. So this is meant to stop that. And one of the biggest things that I want added to the conspicuous action pool is making lockers, interacting them with any way, count as a conspicuous action, because this removes the annoying playstyle, because it's of just survivors hopping in lockers and there's just nothing you can do about it. It's so annoying to face. Same with plot twist DS. It's just a super annoying playstyle to face against, where you're chasing a survivor, sometimes not even meaning to tunnel, but you just so happen to find them and you haven't found anyone else for ages, and they just hop in a locker and there's like nothing you can do unless you try and fake leaving, come back. Even then they wait until you're out of swinging range or something. This is meant to remove the annoying playstyle of survivors just hopping in lockers and interacting them with any way. It's really annoying. And then the last survivor base kit change is that when the killer snuffs a boon at least 2 times, the boon is deactivated forever. I've had survivors abuse boons against me. But yeah, when the killer snuffs a boon at least 2 times, it's gone forever, can't be used. This is like a universal thing, where if the killer snuffs, let's say Dwight and Michaela are in the lobby. Both of them have boons. Dwight puts his boons up. Michaela never puts her boons up. When the killer snuffs the boon twice on Dwight's end, it also disables it on Michaela's end. This is meant to stop the abusiveness of boons, because I've had it done to me on so many occasions where it's like Dark Theory and Shadow Step, Circle of Healing. It's just meant to stop those annoying situations, especially on 2-story maps, where boons can just be aggressively used over and over and over again. Because I've had it done to me, many people have had it done to them, and it's just really annoying to face and go against. So just adding a life system to boons, where they can only be placed twice or 3 times, possibly. Depends, but no more than 3, I don't think. Just having a life system applies to them where they can be placed down a certain number of times, and if they get snuffed out those certain number of times, they're gone forever, can't be placed anymore. This is also meant to be a whole thing to kind of put them in line with hexes as well, because as you know, hexes, once they're cleansed, they're gone forever. Boons, even though I'd say some boons are a bit weaker than hexes and aren't really widely used, I would still say just doing this would stop the abusiveness of boons that people do face against. Though that's it for the base kit changes on both killer and survivor. And now we'll be moving on to, I think, one of my most excited changes I've got on this list, and that is generator changes. So yeah, we'll be moving on to that now. Now moving on from the basic changes, we're now going to be talking about the generator changes, where these have some very interesting changes to them that I do want to talk about. Starting with the charges lost a second. So if you didn't know, when a killer kicks a generator, it loses 0.25 charges a second, which means for it to lose one charge on a generator, it takes 4 seconds. But a survivor repairs a generator at 1 charge a second. So I thought, just to give it a bit more balanced out, a killer, when they kick a gen, it now regresses at 0.5 charges a second. So basically, generators just regress 0.25 charges a second faster, bringing it up to 0.5 charges a second, which means it takes 2 seconds for 1 charge, which kind of brings it more in balance and more in line a little bit. But also, another thing as well is blocked generators will now have the ability to regress, because most people don't know this because it's not really explained anywhere, and I only discovered it recently during the winter event, when they introduced, snow being able to block generators, is that block generators don't regress, and I found that very interesting. So now I've given it the ability to regress, but it regresses at half the rate of a regular regressing generator. So the new rate will be 0.5 charges a second, and now the blocked generator will now regress at 0.25 charges a second, which I think does balance it out a little bit more. And then obviously when the block generator stops being blocked, the regression will instantly go from 0.25 charges to 0.5 charges. But yeah, that's basically it for the charges lost per second. But now we're going to talk about the reworked repair speed penalty. So even though behaviour adding that whole diminishing returns aspect with this upcoming PTB in the new mid-chapter coming up, where they did nerf Blight and stuff like that, even though they are adding that, I'm still going to talk about the repair speed penalty just a little bit, because instead of it being a stackable minus 15% on top of regressing generators, will now be flat numbers. Instead of it being a stackable 15% repair speed penalty, meaning if there's 4 survivors on a generator, they repair at 2.4 charges a second. I decided to rework it so that means when there's 4 survivors repairing on a generator, they only repair at 2 charges a second. Basically, this is also to even out the numbers and stuff, to make some like math parts and stuff to do with Dead by Day a little bit easier, and some stuff easier to understand by new players as well. That's what some of these changes are meant to be. But yeah, so the reworked new repair speed penalty system works like this. When there is 2 survivors working on a generator, it adds a minus 25% onto that, meaning they repair at 1.5 charges a second. When there's 3 survivors on a generator, it adds a minus 15% onto a generator, meaning they repair at 1.8 charges a second. And when 4 survivors are on a generator, it adds a minus 10% onto that generator, meaning they repair at 2 charges a second. And there's also another thing to do with this as well, where when there are more survivors on a generator, an extra 10 seconds get added onto the generator, meaning if there's 4 survivors working on a generator, they repair at 2 charges a second. The generator will take 120 seconds or 120 charges to do, meaning you half that, it takes 60 seconds to do a generator with 4 survivors on it, no like items, perks or anything to increase that. And that's basically the whole reworked repair speed penalty system. And I do think out of all this, where generators gain an extra 10 seconds added onto the generator, it would have a unique effect similar to how when a generator has its charges removed, it would have an effect where there'll be like a little line on the repair progress, and a little bit more extra progress is added on top of that. I'll probably try and do a visual of what that would look like. I'll try and probably do visuals for some of these as well, for like a lot of these as well. But yeah, That's basically the whole reworked speed penalty system, where instead of it being a stackable 50%, it'll just be flat numbers. And then when there's more survivors working on a generator, an extra 10 seconds gets added onto the generator, meaning it goes from 90 to 120 seconds. Which this should hopefully all reduce the whole thing with gen rushing and stuff like that. I kind of did tackle that with the survivor perk changes, but gen rushing and like generator speeds will be heavily tackled in the next part we're going to talk about, and that will be the item changes. But these generator changes are also meant to help the whole like gen rushing, whole like gen jockey, gen speeds that killer players have been facing a lot recently, where it just seems like you could make one mistake, or like you could just have a somewhat longer chase than you would have liked, and like all five generators pop right there and there. I know that's a bit of an over exaggeration, but like I've had it where I make one mistake, like one misuse of my power, and it could literally mean the entire end of my I could be doing insanely well, but just one misplay, like misuse of my power, whatever, could literally just mean the entire end of my run as killer right then and there. And it shouldn't be like that. So that's why like that's like what these changes are meant to be, is to stop that whole gen speed aspect and stuff like that from becoming too much of a problem. And like I said, the next changes, item changes, will also be tackling that as well. So we'll move on to the final little bit to talk about, and that will be item changes to medkits and toolboxes. And right, moving on to the final changes that I would love to see come to Dead by Daylight on my wish list of just like balance changes and ideas, will be item changes. And this one is probably the most complicated one for me to explain. That's why I saved it for last. But this is meant to tackle healing speeds and gen repair speeds going by insanely quickly. I know they're kind of being tackled with this upcoming patch, with the whole diminishing returns change being added to the game, but it doesn't really get tackled with items, because they said in that live stream that add-ons will not count towards diminishing returns, which is a good thing, but also is a bad thing for items, because then let's say you have 2 toolbox add-ons which increase repair speed. Well, that counts as the full base of the toolbox, and using the most commonly used gen rush toolbox, Commodious toolbox in the game, using that toolbox and then adding like I think it's like 30%, and then you add a 25% repair speed, that makes 55%. Commodious toolbox already repairs at 50% speed, so you slap those on which will count as the base repair speed, you're paying at 105% extra speed. And that's not even coming to account like stuff like deja vu and stuff, which wouldn't like be affected at all by the diminishing returns mechanic at all. You can probably go watch other people explain that a bit better with the whole diminishing returns mechanic as well. But that's why I think it's now a good time ever to tackle items. And the first change that would be tackled with medkits and toolboxes is to have, we will reduce all charge add-ons on medkits and toolboxes by 4, decrease all regular repair speed add-ons by 10%, and decrease all sabotage speed add-ons by 10%. That's just one of the changes that we are making to medkits and toolboxes. That's probably like one of the easiest ones that I'd love them to implement straight away. Another thing is that we are removing grip wrench, protective gloves, and instruction add-ons, mainly because these add-ons aren't needed and mainly just take up space. Because I really loved it when they reworked keys, maps, and they added fog vials. They got very more like simplified, and they got their add-ons very simplified as well. So that's kind of what I want to do as well, is to simplify the add-on selections for medkits and toolboxes to make them more simpler. And I'm just removing add-ons I just don't think we need. Like we don't want grip wrench, we don't want protective gloves, we don't want instructions on these add-ons. I don't think these add-ons are needed, and I think they can be completely retired and removed from the game, as this will simplify medkits and toolboxes a little bit more easier for survivors, like they did with keys, maps and fog vials. Also, another thing as well is that we are reworking Brand New Part. Brand New Part has been a pain in the backside for ages now, and all Brand New Part will do is it will add an additional 12 charges to a toolbox. It's been completely reworked, similar to the one visceral add-on for the medkit where it adds 16 charges, but as you know, all charge add-ons got reduced by 4, so that will be 12 charges now instead of 16. So that's why we're also reworking Brand New Part to be on par with that add-on as well, just to remove the whole thing with Brand New Part where it reduces the generator by 10 charges that it's meant to tackle, all that to do with like the whole gen speeds and stuff like that. We are also removing the mechanics and Alex's toolboxes. I don't think these toolboxes are needed at all. I don't think there's any point to them, considering some of the other toolboxes we have in the game. And like I said, it's to make it more simplistic, add more simplicity to Dead by Daylight. And along with that, toolboxes, which also count for medkits as well, we're going to be doing this to medkits, is the following. We reduce the repair speed on Engineer's Toolbox to 50%, increase the charges to 18. Reduce Commodious Toolbox charges to 16 and decrease the repair speed to 35. Reduce the regular green toolbox charges to 14 and decrease the repair speed to 25%. And then reduce worn out tools to 12 charges and decrease repair speed to 15%. And remove the reduction of skill check zones on that toolbox. Now, that will be the same for medkits, but will only be their charges. So the purple medkit will have 18 charges. The blue medkit will have 16 charges. The green medkit will have 14 charges. And then the brown medkit will have 12 charges. Nothing about medkits will be changed other than that. Those are the nerfs that I would want to see come to medkits and toolboxes, with their whole repair speed and charges done to them and stuff like that, and some of the add-ons being adjusted and stuff like that. Speaking of, now that was just mainly toolboxes with a few medkit changes shoved in there, but these next two for item changes are full-on just medkit changes as well, and that's why the anti-exhaust syringe will be renamed to the anti-hemorrhagic syringe. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It'll be reworked to that name again, but instead of it removing exhaustion completely, it will now immediately get rid of the mangle and hemorrhage side effect, and it will consume the medkit on use. So that add-on is staying in the game, but I reworked it to be so it immediately gets rid of the mangle and hemorrhage side effects, and it also does consume the medkit on use. This is to remove the whole thing. I know it's very rarely used as a strategy, but this is also meant to do with the fact that the anti-exhaust syringe is actually just a flat-out buff to an add-on that didn't need it and needed to be nerfed. And this one is still like a buff to it, but it won't be that effective realistically, because of the mangle and hemorrhage stat effects, where it will now be just instantly removing the mangle and hemorrhage stat effects. So that's what I'm reworking the syringe to be. And then another thing for medkits is that the skill check add-ons for medkits will be getting removed. The skill check add-ons will be getting removed. For, like I said, simplicity with add-ons, and, you know, the whole simplicity to do with them, you know, reworking keys, maps, fog vials. It's meant to be simplicity with those. But the skill check add-ons will be going because they are probably the best used add-ons for medkits, and also the most annoying add-ons used for medkits. So that's why they're going. They will be retired add-ons. But yeah, other than that, that is really all the item changes that I wanted to talk about, and that is every single change that I wanted to talk about with Dead by Daylight. That is every single change that I wanted to talk about and wanted to like do it and all of that and stuff. That's everything I wanted to talk about, everything I wanted to discuss regarding different changes to push Dead by Daylight into a more balanced state, because as you know, they're nerfing Blight, they're nerfing Nurse, nerf the strong stuff on Survivor now to be on par, and then we can somewhat get this game into a more balanced state. And there's definitely stuff I've missed on here and forgot to talk about, especially regarding Survivor perk changes, because there's definitely a few perks I probably missed and stuff like that. But yeah, that's every single change that I want to come to Dead by Daylight, and I will be keeping this list here, and every time a change like that comes through, I will be editing this list, changing it up until this list can be fully gone. And that's why I'm also adding behavior in this video, because I want them to see this and I want them to know that these are the changes I want. And considering you're nerfing Blight, you're nerfing Nurse down to a more balanced level, I think, just for it to be fair, you should add these changes to Dead by Daylight, just to make it so the Survivor is more balanced and more on par with what you're doing with Killer Nurse, by not having Blight and Nurse bottleneck the game for the rest of the cast. So that's why you should nerf the strong stuff on Survivor as well, to bring it more down to a more respectable level, to bring it into a more balanced state. What you're doing, behavior, is amazing. Do these changes and it will be even better. But yeah, anyway, I really hope some of my explaining in this video made a bit sense. Sometimes I do tend to ramble, and sometimes I do like mispronounce some words and stuff like that. So I really hope it kind of made sense and easy to understand some of the changes I wanted and stuff like that. But this is my wish list for what I want behavior to do balance wise with Dead by Daylight, to bring the game into a more balanced state. But yeah, other than that, guys, there will be another video coming out hopefully soon on the third channel as well, talking about future licenses and stuff, and just another wish list of future licenses and stuff like that I want coming to Dead by Daylight. So that'll be another video you see on the third channel. I'm decided to do these videos now as we're in that little mid period between you know, All Kill Comeback and the 10-year anniversary, and this mid chapter is looking to turn out really well. And so yeah, other than that, I really hope you enjoyed today's video, guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.